My daughter convinced me to try an open marriage. Cheating on my husband ruined everything. Hey Reddit. I never thought my marriage would end up like this. My husband and I had been together for over 20 years, raising our daughter, building a life, and loving each other in the best way we knew how. But somehow, things changed, and before I knew it, the family I cherished was in ruins, all because I listened to my daughter's advice. It started as innocent conversations. My daughter, Anna, is in her mid-20s, fresh out of college, and has always been more progressive than me. She would often talk about modern relationships, polyamory, and how monogamy was an outdated concept. At first, I just nodded along, letting her talk about things that didn't apply to my life. But then, one night, after a few glasses of wine, she asked me a question that changed everything. Mom, do you really think Dad is the only man you'll ever love? I laughed it off at first. Of course, he was. We had history, a deep bond, and a love that had stood the test of time. But then she kept pushing, asking if I'd ever felt like I was missing out. If I had ever wondered what it would be like to be with someone else. And the truth was, I had. Not in a way that meant I didn't love my husband, but in a way that made me curious. Anna saw my hesitation and ran with it. She told me that many married couples open their relationships, that it strengthened them rather than tearing them apart. She said it was about trust, about giving each other freedom while still being a team. She made it sound so logical, so modern, and so tempting. I didn't bring it up to my husband, David, right away. But the idea lingered in my mind for weeks. I started noticing how stagnant our relationship had become. We had fallen into routine, work, dinner, TV, sleep. The passion we once had seemed like a distant memory. I convinced myself that maybe Anna was right, that maybe exploring something new could reignite what we had. When I finally brought it up to David, he was shocked. He thought I was joking at first. But when he realized I was serious, his face fell. You want to sleep with other people? He asked, his voice hollow. I fumbled, trying to explain it the way Anna had explained it to me. It wasn't about replacing him. It was about growing, about experiencing life fully while still loving each other. I told him we could set boundaries, that we would always put our marriage first. He didn't agree right away, but he didn't say no either. And that was enough for me. Over the next few weeks, I kept bringing it up, pushing gently, until one day, he finally said, fine. If this is what you want, we'll try it. Looking back, I should have realized his tone meant everything. He wasn't agreeing because he wanted it. He was agreeing because he thought he had to. The first time I went out with someone new, I felt like I was doing something exhilarating, like I was young again. His name was Mark. He was charming, funny, and made me feel desirable in a way I hadn't felt in years. The first night I spent with him, I told myself it was harmless, that it was exactly what Anna had described, an expansion of my life, not a replacement for my husband. But the moment I came home, something felt off. David wouldn't look at me the same way. He said he was fine, that he had agreed to this, but I could see it in his eyes. Something had changed. I ignored it. I told myself he just needed time. But then he started going out too. And suddenly, the jealousy I swore wouldn't be there was tearing me apart. I wanted to believe that we were on the same page, but when he came home late at night smelling like someone else's perfume, I felt sick. We started arguing more. The man who had once been my rock was now distant, cold. And yet, I kept seeing Mark. I told myself that David was doing the same thing, that it was fair. But deep down, I knew this wasn't working. Then one night, David finally said what had been lingering in the air for months. I don't think I can do this anymore, he said, his voice breaking. I was stunned. What do you mean? I thought this was what we both wanted. He shook his head. No, this is what you wanted. I just didn't want to lose you. Hearing that crushed me. I had pushed him into something he never wanted, something that was breaking him. And now, we were standing on the edge of something I wasn't sure we could come back from. And then, the worst moment of all, he looked me in the eyes and said, I met someone. And I think I have feelings for her. My world shattered. I had thought this was just physical. I had told myself we were strong enough to handle it. But now, my husband, the man I had spent decades with, was telling me he might be falling for someone else. I wanted to scream, to take it all back, to pretend none of this had ever happened. But it was too late. And the worst part? Anna, the daughter who had convinced me this was a good idea, was furious. Mom, how could you do this? She asked, tears in her eyes. I stared at her in disbelief. You're the one who told me to do this. She shook her head. I didn't think you'd actually destroy your marriage. The irony of it all was unbearable. My husband was slipping away from me, my daughter was disgusted with me, and I had no idea how to fix it. Now, I don't know where we go from here. David says he needs space. Anna barely talks to me. And Mark? He was never anything more than a distraction. I thought opening our marriage would bring us closer. Instead, it's tearing us apart. And now, I don't know if there's any way to fix what I've broken.